Hi, I'm Dorothy O'Dell, and I'm from Windsor, Ontario, and I'm an author and a bookkeeper and a veteran advocate. And so I'm just really excited to be here with Pearl today.
Hello, sunshine, good to see you again. Had to walk out to let you back in. Stuck in a storm of a relationship. Lost my fire. Oh, and I forgot about me for way too long. But it's rolled on. Now there ain't no shade around here. Once you leave the clouds, you're under. Ain't it funny how there ain't no rain? All clear. Why'd it take so long to leave you in the rearview mirror? Now nobody gonna steal my sunshine or turn my blue sky gray. All I know is at the end of the day, wildflowers grow when there ain't no shade.
Hey everybody, it's Pearl Sharenza, and we are back for another episode of Conversations with Pearl. And I am with Women Successful Living, where I empower women to put themselves first with the power of the word no to others and yes to themselves. And today we are so excited to have a conversation around that, as well as things around self-care and all kinds of conversations that might come up as between two women. And today is no different. Today we have our special guest. Her name is Dorothy Graham O'Dell, and she is a child of God, a wife, stepmom, and loving daughter. Dorothy is a bookkeeper by trade with over 24 years of experience. She just wrote her first book called The Overcomer: Facing Challenges with Faith and Courage, which hit the top 100 international bestsellers, woohoo, on Amazon on its first day of release. She shares her obstacles of overcoming being bullied in school for her weight, low self-worth issues, growing up with sick parents, the trauma of her uncle's suicide, and leaving emotional abusive relationships. Never give up, because in the end, there is true happiness. She hopes that this book will help others overcome their obstacles and know they are not alone in their struggles. Dorothy also does speaking engagements on these topics as well. She has also started her live show called Unstoppable Overcomers, which showcases other people who have overcome their obstacles and helped others along the way. She has met some incredible people and built lifelong friendships. Dorothy started the show to give a platform to others so that people would know they are never alone in their circumstances. She is taking her veteran series and pitching it to networks so that they can get eyes on the huge issue of veteran suicide, which is so, so important. We are losing 44 veterans a day, and it's her mission to eradicate that number. Let's help her do that, you guys. Dorothy, along with her husband Joe and stepson, resides in Windsor, Ontario, Canada. Her mission is to eradicate homelessness and bring awareness of more topics that people think are taboo, because taboo will not do. Welcome to the show, Dorothy.
Well, thank you so much. That was lengthy. I'm going to have to cut that bio down.
Hey, it's all important stuff, especially what you're doing around the veterans. And I want to talk about that some today as well, because I'm a daughter of a Marine Corps brat. I've got a brother and two nephews that also served in the Marines. So it's really, really important topic to me as well. And I'm glad we'll have a time to talk about that today. But tell us, Dorothy, a little bit about you. Tell us your background. You shared about the traumas growing up and the health and then the bullying and and I know, like, back in our day, bullying wasn't talked a lot in school, and now it's sort of talked a lot, but I still think we have a long way to go with it. So tell us a little bit about what life was like growing up and what led you to do what you do today.
Sure, yeah. And you're right. Bullying was never talked about. As a matter of fact, my parents didn't even know what was going on with me. I don't know, because, dude, maybe it was because they were never well, that I just didn't want to add to what they were going through. And so I kind of shielded my parents from a lot of stuff that was going on. And I know I'm not that's not typical for children. Or maybe it is, I don't know. That's just for me. And yeah, growing up like that, it was hard, right? Like, when you have people constantly telling you that, you're worthless and things like that, it does a lot to your self-esteem. And so, since I had low self-esteem, the first guy that came along and said, "I loved you," I believed him, right? Because why would someone lie, right? And so that turned into 4 years of hell. And so finally got out of that relationship. It was very mentally and verbally abusive. And I can remember telling our friends, I loved his parents. I loved his siblings. I loved the fact that this was the first time that I actually had like couple friends. So that was all positives for me to stay. And of course, they kind of make you feel like it's your fault. So I thought, okay, well, maybe if I didn't do this or didn't said this, then whatever. And so finally, after 4 years, I had enough. I left that relationship, took a 10-year healing journey. And, growing up with parents that were ill, it was, I always did a lot around the house for my parents. So I always was taking care of everybody. And that's what I did. I never had self-care. I didn't even know what it was back then. And so, here I am in my 20s. My uncle took his life Christmas Day when I was in my early 20s. So that added to everything. But, it just kept going on. Didn't think that my life wasn't normal. I just thought this is what happened, right? So like I said, took a 10-year healing journey after I left the abusive relationship and just tried to find myself, and instead of people pleasing, well, what would make me happy? I had no idea. My dad even went so far as to say, why don't you take bookkeeping? Because everybody needs a bookkeeper. And I thought, okay, well, he's right. But here I am 27 years later, and I'm thinking, man, there's got to be more to life than this because I'm telling you, right. And so I thought, that's great and everything, but there has to be more to life than that. And of course, I still wanted to be married, but I wanted it to be to the right person. So after I tried to fix myself, went on several dating sites, which were, that was a whole other, like you could do a show just on that. Finally found an amazing guy. And it's funny. And I was on the app was Zeus and I didn't know how to use it. And so his profile come up, all great things, but it didn't say, it said he was separated, not divorced. And I thought, well, that's not what I want. I want somebody who's like available, gone past their baggage. Right. And turns out I hit the wrong button. which opened up his profile. So he sent me a message right away. I'm like, oh man. I said, well, worst case scenario, you can never have too many friends, right? So he's messaging me and he says, hey, why don't can I get your phone number? I really don't want to be on this all the time. And I'm like, okay, well, whatever. He didn't look like an axe murderer. So I'm a pig. I take risks. I take huge risks. And so it was a good thing I took the risk because I ended up meeting him in person. I fell madly in love as soon as I met him, which is kind of cliche. And I always ask my parents, how do you know it's the right one? And they said, you just know. And I thought that was such bullshit. I'm like, you're just stringing me along, Mom. Whatever. So, but I refused to tell him that I had those feelings. And so I made him say he loved me first. It was like a whirlwind courtship. After 2 months, we ended up moving in together, and the rest is history. Here we are, 6.5 years later, be married 4 years in October. And so, yeah.
Okay, so I'm laughing. We have a lot in common, and yes, you just know. So I'm going to share a little bit of my story, but I'm going to touch on how you met your husband in a minute. But I just want to kind of go back on some of the things you shared because I was making notes, as I always do that while we're talking, and not sharing what family about the bullying. I think I feel like we still have that challenge because I think kids are afraid to talk up because they're afraid. I know when my kids were younger, my oldest is forever 25 and my youngest is 23. And I know like when that would happen, I would show up. I'd be like, I'm there. I'm Mama Bear. Let's go. Let's talk. Let's work it out. Why are we doing this? We even did a situation where at school, there was a situation at my son's high school and we as a parents got together and my son was so mad at my husband and I for that for the rest of his life. But I feel like we don't talk about that enough. I feel like the kids are still scared because maybe how their parents going to react, maybe they'll overreact they're afraid of, or B, that the person that's been the bullier is doing that threatening, that we know that happens also in abuse situations and things like that. So I feel like that's probably part of why maybe we still don't hear that talking, and I want to talk about that a little bit more. and we're going to circle back to the bullying piece, but also the caregiver, like that, you went on that self-care journey that to find yourself. And that's so, so important. And that's what we talk about here on the show a lot. And at our retreats, in fact, I wrote down, you said there's got to be more to life, right? And that, the bookkeeper, and you're like, there's got to be more to life than doing people's books, right? And that's so what our retreat was just about. We just had our 7th annual WSL PJ retreat where we're in our pajamas for 4 days, no makeup, let our girls hang loose and just get to know the women who came to learn to dream relentlessly, to learn to, this is my dream, but how can I do more than just bookkeeping for 24 years? Like what you're saying, right? And I love that you said, I'm going to go step into what I want to do. And we're going to talk more about those things that you're doing as well. And then, because, and the people pleaser, I'm a people pleaser addict. I'm a recovering addict of people pleaser, I like to say. And learning to say no, we forget that no is a sentence. It truly is a sentence. And we don't have to feel guilty over that, right? And so we're going to, you've hit some really great topics we're going to talk about, but I'm going to circle back around those topics. But I want to tell you, my husband and I met at a company picnic. I had at Knott's Berry Farm in California. I was 19 years old. And back then, 21 was a drinking age in California. So my girlfriends and I, we would go out to this club. You'd have dinner, and then the club opened up. And if you got drinks at dinner, they didn't ID you in the club. So we'd go for dinner so I could get drinks because I was the only one not legal. And we had tickets to this company picnic. We're like, oh, we'll find a couple of guys. We'll meet a couple of guys, invite them to go with us. Met nobody. Gave our tickets. My roommate and I gave our tickets to a friend so she could bring her family. Ran into my husband and his roommate. They were with 2 other girls who we assumed they were all together. The end of the night comes. We were the only 4 left in the parking lot. The entire parking lot's empty. We're having conversation. And all of a sudden, my husband's car is about to be towed away. He's like, I got to go. See you later. I'm like, okay, nice meeting you. Adios. So we go to my car and my girlfriend's like, you're going to marry him. I'm like, what the heck? I just met him and he doesn't even have my phone number. And she's like, oh, no, they have our number. I'm like, okay. And literally, I had an old boyfriend from Florida that was coming to visit me. He came to visit me. I made him leave early. We went on a couple of dates, my husband and I. We met in August. By October, we moved in together, Dorothy. And by December, I asked him to marry me. It took us 3 years to get married because there were some family issues with my parents divorcing. But it does. I truly believe, like when you asked your mom that question, does it really happen that way? And I truly believe it was. And I wrote down divine intervention for you, because when you said that, you clicked on totally by accident, and opened up and you met, it was meant to be that way. So so those that are listening, I'm telling you, Dorothy's story and my story, they do happen. And I know you're sitting there going, those two are so full of baloney. It's such cliche, but I'm telling you, that's all part of being a shiro, is you find those moments. And I just love that. So I just think it's so, so cool. So let's circle back. Let's circle back around to, you brought up some great topics I wanted to touch on. And that is that, like, for those, if you could think about the parent, that the mom or dad that might be listening to us right now that are concerned about their child, being bullying, what would you say would be some good opening questions to have? If you look back on how you did, if you would have said, I wish somebody would have this, what could you say to those parents that are listening?
That's a good question. Because I don't know. I feel like I'm not your typical child. I truly am not. And so like my parents would see that a different mood, right? So when you see that your child is moody or not themselves, ask the question, hey, are you all right? Is anything wrong, type thing. In my case, don't harp on it, because if you harp on it, I'm going to close down even more. And just look at the patterns, I would say, right? And just look in and see what the patterns are that they developed. And I guess just reaching out, just letting them know that you're there for them if they want to open up. And I'm just thinking back of that, how I was back then. And no matter what my parents would have asked me, I would just shut down. So I'm not your typical person to ask.
Yeah, no, and those are really good things, like the moods, not acting themselves, don't harp on it, and the patterns. One of the things that I want to share too, if you are listening, this is something you can start. It doesn't matter how old your kids are, even if they're like over than 18, it's never too late to start this. I had somebody that I worked with, and we lived in the same neighborhood. So every so often I would pass by him. And it was just about once a week, I would notice, oh, he's at breakfast with one of his kids. And so I asked him one day at work, I said, hey, I always see you having breakfast on a weekday. Like they're going to go to school, right? And I said, with one of your boys. And he said, Pearl, he said, from the minute they were born, I knew that I wanted to have a time at the table with them. And so he said that he would tell his wife, I'm going to take, whatever his son's name, I can't remember now, so-and-so out for lunch or breakfast. And even though they were just babies, he would have, eat by himself, feed a bottle, he just created that moment for them. And he carried it on even through, he said, I know he's doing it when they were coming home from college. And he said, what he did is he created a table. So if you're listening as parents, he created a space that said, this is our space. This is your space, your safe space. You can tell me anything you need to tell me. There's no judgment. There's no punishment unless you've done something against the law. It's all cool. Tell me whatever it is, whether it's sex, drugs, rock and roll, whatever is happening, he said. And he created that space. And I was like, I just was so inspired and empowered by that. And so I started creating that with my kids. And for my oldest, it became sushi as he became older. We both had a love of sushi. So if he would say, hey, Mom, you want to go for sushi, because as he got older, got college and working, it was hard to keep the same schedule. But he would just say, you want to go for sushi? And that was my trigger to know he wanted to have a conversation about something, right? And then my younger one, he loves, excuse me, he loves the movies. So if he would say, you want to go for a movie or something, or, hey, I'm swinging by, like now he's bought his own house. So, hey, I'm going to swing by, I have a hair appointment. Would you want to do lunch at the house? So then we know, oh, he wants to come have a conversation. So if you're listening, it's not too late to create that space, to have that the option for your kids to know, I can tell my mom or dad anything, and they're not going to hold judgment. They're not going to try to fix it right away. They're just going to be like, let me talk and get it off my chest. And then what you can say is, and this became a big thing in my older son's life as he struggled with some alcohol. Unfortunately, he hooked up with the cult, and we knew it. He no longer was with them. He was able to realize, and he grew out of that. But we knew it wasn't a good thing. But as parents, you can't say, oh, I see you doing this, because then they're going to be like, gravitate sometimes to that. So one of the best advice I got from a friend who I do Bible study with, he's like, just ask, how can you support them in that? And that became a great response to many things that my kids would tell me at that table. So if you're listening, create that space for your kids, whether your kids are only 3 years old or they're even in college. Like, have a conversation. If they're away at school, do a Skype, create a Skype time where you just get together and say, hey, just checking on you, how's things going? And when they tell you something, ask the question, how can I support you in that? Because especially when we're talking about bullying, they may not want you to go react to the bully. They may not want you to go there because they're concerned about how it's going to be responded to at school. But if you ask them how I can support you with that, they're going to tell you, this is what I need help with, right? And so I love that you shared that. And I hope that the parents that are listening, the moms that are listening, or even teachers, carry this forward, because I think it's an important conversation that we need to have with our young adults and our young kids. So I'm glad we brought that up. So I want to do a little shift over now. I want to talk about you're dreaming relentlessly. Like you went on this roadmap, overcoming people pleasing. You took that 10-year journey to really find yourself in self-care. So tell us about that journey, Dorothy. Like, what were some of the things that you did to get yourself regrounded with who you are and what you wanted? So what were some of the things you did?
Well, it's funny. One of the things that broke up the abusive relationship was I had formed a friendship with a lady that asked me to go to her church. And I thought, okay, it's not a thing we as growing up ever did, but I thought, okay, well, what's the harm in that? So I started attending different church sessions with her, which my then boyfriend didn't like. And that's what created a shift in the relationship and things like that. So I started attending Bible studies, and I started, I didn't have a lot of friends growing up, but it's funny because God started putting different women in my life to help me through this transition. Right. So in those tribes, like, these ladies were like, okay, well, let's go to this event or that event. So I went from being introverted and being by myself all the time to being more outgoing and really tapping into what the church had or things like that. And there was this thing program called Theophostic Prayer Ministry, which is basically going down deep in with your trigger. So if something triggered you, just basically putting the truth to the lie based thinking that is what you're thinking, and asking God, what he thinks of that situation is basically the gist of it. So I started doing that. I not only went for that counseling with that, but then I decided well, let's see if I can help others with that. So I took the course to be a facilitator as well. So I had that, and then I had the Bible study, and then all these, like I said, all these women just kept coming into my life and pouring into me. And then of course I met, there's this woman named Danny Johnson, who is a personal development coach, and she's based out of the US. And I had a friend of mine say, you really need to come to one of her events. I'm like, okay, well, I'll go to her event. What's the worst that could happen? So I followed her across the United States and plugged into that, which was helping me, definitely finding out who I was, what I wanted to be, type thing like that, and traveling across the world. So, I started doing that, and then just finding different people along the way that would lead me to the next thing, and being open to what God really had for me in those moments it is definitely totally on that track. And then I met this woman, Joanne Yugi, who was doing the On Purpose course, and she's a lady from my town. And so she says, well, hey, why don't you come and join this group with us? It's a 7-week intensive course. And I'm like, okay. And she said, you are the only one that I know of that has done so much personal development on themselves and wants to truly change. I've never seen somebody, like, if somebody points something out to me, I'm right on it to try and change that. Right. And so it's just somebody just taking constructive criticism, I guess, from the people that have done something more in their life. And so I just kept on keeping on, I guess, and putting one foot in front of the other. So that's how that journey started.
That's so cool. I love that, one of the things when we do the retreats is we want to create those connections with other women. We call them our PJ sisters. And then also they become part of our Shiro tribe and our Shiro, we call it the Shiro League. But I love that, you started with the faith, like faith came into that, like having that faith and that belief. And to me, I have a belief in God, but some people, whoever you believe in, if you're listening to us, it's important to have that's something that sort of helps ground you and helps you have that center of where you want to start with and who are you. And I think that's so powerful that we remember that, because we forget that, whoever you believe in, whatever you believe in, I truly in my heart believe that we've come into this world. We have this talent. And I say this, so you're listening going, oh, here she goes again. But I really believe this, that you come into this world, you have this talent and this gift. And when you don't center yourself and figure out what that is for yourself, you're cheating yourself. And then on top of that, you're cheating others. Like if Dorothy hadn't done that, she wouldn't be sitting here with me today having this conversation and letting you hear too how you could do the same. And so I think it's important. And then also surrounding yourself with women in your life. I think that is so powerful, that and those women that are going to be there for you to lift you up when you need to be lifted up. They're going to be there to tell you, hey, that's not who you really are. Let's talk about that, right? They're not going to beat you down, but they might call you out and hold you accountable for your actions, for your, maybe the people pleasing, those saboteurs that show up in our lives where we sabotage and we judge ourselves, saying we're not worthy, you can do better, you shouldn't do that. Those are the people that you want in your corner to say, why not, Dorothy? Why not, Pearl, go after that? Or they'll say, did you think about doing it this way? How about trying it that way? Or they'll call out to you and say, you know what, you're surrounding yourself with somebody that really is not serving you well, and that I love that you call that your tribe, and having that for you. That's when we did the Shiro League. We meet every Sunday evening from 8 to 9 p.m. It's on Zoom. We don't record it at all. but it's be there till we work on self-care, we work on personal development. We have somebody comes in and talks about finance, all those powerful things that we as women want to learn to be better at, or to pour into others and teach as well. And so then the Shiro, for those that are listening and haven't heard it before, it means that you become stronger, you become happier, you become empowered, you become radiant in your original self when you start stepping into that dream you have, to who you really are, and not letting others tell you that's not who you are. And so I love that you found your tribe and surrounded yourself with that, because we need to do that. And it's, again, I'm loving to see some of the things that are happening for our young women, young girls, even in elementary school. I love to watch TikToks and things like that where the little girls are going, I'm beautiful, I'm powerful, because we didn't have that when we were kids. Our moms didn't know to teach us that. Our moms, and their moms grew up where they took care of the house, and they did the cooking, and the husband did the working, and so we're not in that age anymore. So I feel like we're finally starting to reach that generation where we understand we need to teach mental fitness. We need to teach overcoming our judging and our saboteurs, and we need to surround ourselves with people that are going to lift us up. And so I love that you were able to do that. And so let's talk about what you're doing with the veterans. I really want to make sure we touch on that, the veterans and homelessness. As I said, I've got 4 generations of Marines in my family. My husband's biological father died the day before he was born. He had served in the service as well, and he went on. He did his career with the government, and he retired with the VA. I think he had almost 20 years at the VA, with 20 or 20 plus years at the VA, and another 10 with the Department of Defense, I believe it was. But that's really powerful for him. He was able to do some big findings and brought him to Congress, and I'm just so proud of that work that he did, and the legacy he left behind for those that after retiring will carry on that work. And so tell us about that work and what brought you to bring awareness to this.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank them for their service for me. And yeah, so on our show, it was January 31st of last year. I remember the date. We had a gentleman by the name of Greg Bicknell on our show, who is retired Air Force. He was in the Air Force for, I believe, 28 years. And he came on and he started an organization called Camaraderie Rescue Mission. And he said it was founded because he had attempted suicide several times while he was in active duty, and he never he didn't feel that he could go anywhere to get help for that, until finally he decided enough's enough, and he decided he was going to go and get help. Well, he was told to make an appointment. And so he went to his commanding officer and he said, this is bullshit. I finally got up enough nerve to ask for help, and then I was told to make an appointment. He goes, don't worry about it. I'll handle this one by myself. And his commanding officer said, oh, what is going to happen now? He goes, don't worry about it. I got it. So that is what founded Camaraderie Rescue Mission. And back then, in January of last year, it was 22 Veterans Day were dying by suicide. In September of last year, that went from 22 to 44. So I'm like, when I heard this, I'm like, why is this happening? Like, what is the disconnect between what they're not getting and what they need? And so I started interviewing veteran after veteran after veteran, and it was the same story. The VA wasn't doing what they needed to do, and or they just weren't reaching out because the stigma around it. Because, if you have a gun and you're trained to kill, and then you go in and say, wait a minute, I'm having I want to kill myself, they're going to away and take their livelihood away. Right. So it depended on a lot of different factors. And ultimately they felt that they couldn't reach out for help. And so I thought, okay, well, let's bring awareness to this. Number one, talk to our men and women. And I was truly disgusted when I heard from several of my veterans saying that when they came back from war, that they were treated like dirt. They were basically, treated like second-class citizens, and they put their life on the line for our country. And I'm like, this is disgusting. The veteran homelessness is absolutely disgusting. They go out, they put their life on the line, come back, and they don't even have homes anymore. I'm like, I'm like, something has to change. So within that, I decided that I would put my money where my mouth is. Went on the board from Camaraderie Rescue Mission, doing my best to bring awareness to the programs that we were doing at that time. And basically, it was all about camaraderie. And a lot of them just want to be heard, right? They just, when you leave the Air Force or the military, they don't give you enough tools to transition out, right? You get a 2-week course on, and that's it. And then you're left and you're used to being with your guys, right? Because you're with their family and that's their tribe. And so when you come out, your wife has no idea who you are anymore. The divorce rate amongst our veterans is 80% or higher. They come home expected to act normal. Well, the spouse doesn't know what to do because she's used to them being deployed or, doing what they're doing. They're not used to being underfoot. They have no idea how to transition this. Half of them won't accept the help. So I'm like, how can we change this? So that is, I'm looking at the how-tos. I definitely joined other groups where, if you want camaraderie, that's what you need. I'll put you in this group. If you want help with the VA, I now have access to Bright with another veteran. He started an app called Bright app, which has access to the VA and everything that you'd ever want to know or not know. So, we can plug you into that. If you just want somebody to hear, I'm here for you, or, I can put you in other groups. And so that's basically how I help. I've always said, if I see a need, I fill it, right? It drives me nuts when, and this is, just joking aside, your husband throws his clothes on the floor, the waste basket's right there. So, why don't you just see it and do it, right? So I seen the need, now I filled it. And so depending on what a veteran needs, is where I go. And I just keep collecting, I guess, these different groups for veterans so that I could help in any way possible. And so, I have doctors at my disposal that, can help them with their PTSD. And ultimately, I want to end suicide, not just in the veteran space, but in civilian life as well. As having an uncle that took his life, I know what it's like. And so I just want to, and the more I'm digging in this, like, why would I take a veteran community? I started digging into my roots. Come to find out, my great grandfather was in the Navy. He was Canadian, but he was stationed in San Francisco. So back in 1948. So, I have that. My grandfather had served as a cadet at one point, and he was president at the Legion in Kingsville, Ontario, for several years. My dad and my brother served as cadet. I had an uncle that served in the Canadian Armed Forces for years. So it's just, the legacy that my family has left me is one of service. And so I was like, well, no wonder why. I grew up in the Canadian Legion. Every Friday night we'd go to the Legion with Grandpa. And right. And so I was like, well, no wonder why I'm involved in this, because I've always been around it. I just didn't knew what it meant when I was in my 20s. Now I know what it means. And so now I'm going to help these men and women get the help that they need.
I think it's so powerful that people like you are out doing that for our veterans, because it's like I said, I saw my husband get so aggravated with like the way that our government took care of them. And you said you touched on some of them, like a 2-week course when they leave. It's like, you've been in for anywhere from 4 years to 20 years. You're going to sum it up in 2 weeks. Hello,
Yeah.
and not even having that transitional training for, like you said, for the families, because you're right. I remember my dad got out of the service. It was a whole adjustment for, and back then when my dad was in the service, he did 3 tours in Vietnam. We didn't stay on base. We got kicked off a base and went sent to upstate New York because they didn't have enough base housing for us. And my parents couldn't own a home at that time. They couldn't afford it. So to have, 2 weeks to help them leaving, that's just crazy. And to have people like you and the organization step in, and even the other ones that we don't talk about today, to step in and be that, help the veteran be heard, like you said, and then give them the tools for transitioning. It's so, so powerful and so needed. And you're right. I mean, the suicide rate is just, it's really sad that, and it goes to show we're not doing enough for our veterans. And I think it's across the world that we don't do enough. We expect them to go do these things. And then we just say, thank you very much. And here's your 2 weeks, and, see you later. It's definitely, a need that you are doing. And I'm so glad there's people like you that are doing that and trying to fill that void that we have. And I hope those that are listening, we're going to share in a little bit in the show notes and everything, how to connect with you and the organization as well, to reach out if they want to help. And if you don't, if it's not there, just ask somewhere, how can I help? Because there's always a need to give in our community. And I believe that, even like we go out to our retreats, we always trying to find a restaurant that we can support locally so that we can give back for what we're receiving in their city. So I love that you're doing that. So it's so, so important. And I'm glad that somebody gave you that inspiration and said, let's go do more. I think it's amazing. So I'm so happy you're doing that. I want to talk about your book. And let's talk about the Overcomer Facing Challenges with Faith and Courage. Tell us about the book and a little bit of what inspired you to do that.
Sure. Well, it's funny because I was talking to a girlfriend of mine and I said, I've been through a lot. And she goes, yeah, you have. And this was before I even got married. So this was just before COVID hit, I was having this conversation. And I said, I should write a book. And she says, yes, you should. So for 5 years, it's been in my head. And all of a sudden, COVID hit. And God's like, well, now you got time. You don't have to drive that hour because now you're working at home. And I'm just like, oh, Lord. I'm like, who the heck wants to listen about me? Like, I'm some chick from Windsor, Ontario. No one even knows where Windsor is, other than the fact if you tell them it's across the street from Detroit. So I'm like, okay. So I sat down at my computer and I just started typing away. And it just like basically told itself. And it's just basically my life's journey of how I overcame those things, like how I overcame bullying, how I overcame the relationships that I was in. I was in my very first relationship, never forget it. The gentleman was Muslim, which my dad had a huge issue with. My dad was very prejudiced. And, to the point where my mom says, well, if you don't stop, you're going to lose your daughter. And so my dad did stop. And that relationship was something else. We ended up being friends for a while afterwards, but it was just not one that I could continue. Not when somebody shows up 4 hours late each time you meet them. Like, who does that? Anyways, that's a whole other issue. So, I shared that in there, I had went on my very first missions trip at 40, and that was life-changing. So I shared a little bit about that and just really shared my struggles and, how I came over that. But then, with every crappy story, there is a rainbow, right? And my rainbow was finding my husband. And, thank God I did. And just sharing a little bit about our journey in there. And just sharing up to, I shared, I think at that time, my dad had been diagnosed with cancer. And so I don't think the whole story of his cancer journey is in there, because he was still alive back when that was out. And so just, thank God that that I did find my husband, Joe, and just really sharing that, hey, if you just stick with it and just keep putting one foot in front of the other, you can get through anything. And just my whole premise for even writing the book was, if I didn't want anybody to feel alone. I truly felt alone in a lot of the circumstances growing up. I didn't feel like I could reach out to anybody. I didn't have that inner circle back then, right? And so just know, and I wanted to be everybody's inner circle. That's why, don't give up hope, and don't make something that is so, in the moment, it's not trivial. Trust me, I get it. Like, because there's been moments where I have personally felt that life probably would have been a hell of a lot easier if I wasn't here, right? Or that, whatever have you. And so there were moments where I thought, what if tomorrow never came, right? And so in having those moments, I think if everybody was honest with themselves, I think probably everybody at one point in their life have had that conversation with themselves, maybe not acted on it, but I thought, life would be easier if I just ended it. So, just knowing that if I could go through this, anybody else could, but no, I want people to know that they're not alone. And that's why I wrote the book, so that people could say, hey, if she could do it, I can do it. And don't make a big decision that it can never be reversible in a moment of, don't give up, basically is the message.
And that's a beautiful message too. And it's so important for those that are listening, if you feel like that at all, to know to reach out to somebody, because it's really, really important to know. It seems overwhelming, and you're right. I'll be honest with you. I've had those thoughts before, and it's very overwhelming because you feel in that moment like there's nothing else, when really there is. And it sounds cliche. So if you're listening to us, you're probably going, yeah, you don't understand. We do understand. And getting help is so, so important. And to know you're not alone. I mean, the biggest thing is the fear of, okay, if this truly happens, whether it's, losing a job, or like me, I lost my son last year, at 25 years old in July. And many people look at me often and say, you're so strong. Sometimes I'm just strong on the outside because that's what I have to be. But sometimes I'm very weak on the inside and overcome with grief. And I know that tomorrow's going to come. So how do I get through today? And part of that is allowing my emotions to come, allowing me to feel the emotions, allowing myself to say, you know what, today's not a great day. I might need to change some things in my schedule because I need to be here for what I'm feeling. And it's okay to do that. And on top of that, reaching out for help, whether it's, I think the hotline is like 211, whatever that is, or just calling somebody and saying, hey, do you have a minute to talk? Because I just need to talk to somebody. Don't be afraid to do that. It's a big part of why we started the movement every July. And this is for every day of your life if you're listening to us. But when my son passed last year in July, about a week after he passed, he had two friends show up at our door looking for him. Hey, I'm trying to catch up with Matthew, can't get a hold of him. And then we had to have the conversation, and they were like, oh my gosh, I almost stopped by the day before he passed away, right? So that those regrets, right? And so we'd sit down and have conversations. And then the weirdest thing, Dorothy, and I truly 100% believe it's divine intervention, his phone number is merged with my phone number somehow. So somehow or another, I get his messages, and every once in a while I'll get a message comes across, hey, what's up? And I'm like, oh, they're trying to reach Matthew. And then that conversation. So we started a movement in July. We call it Make the Call from Matt. So call that person that you haven't checked on a little while. Call the person who maybe, you've been meaning to call, but keep forgetting. And don't just text, like really pick up the phone, have a physical conversation, let them hear your voice, and let them know, I'm just thinking about you. Just want to check in and say hi. It doesn't mean you have to carve out a time in your day to go have lunch, but if you can, invite them to lunch as well. But just check on that person, because, sometimes it can be heavier for others and not as easy as what we're saying, is just to push through. And it's important to have your voice be heard about what your concerns are and how you're feeling. And then also to have those tools as well to, help you get through those feelings and know that you're not alone. And, that's where you can have a therapist, you can have a coach, they almost, I'm not a therapist, but I am a coach, and they kind of in some ways interside with one another, because, the therapist is going to help you see that the past and feel the past. And the coach is going to help you see what's in the future, that it sucks right now. You might be feeling like, I don't know that, what tomorrow's going to bring. And the fear of not knowing what tomorrow brings will hold you back. It will keep you from moving forward. And if you could just I think you even said it, take that first step. Just take that first step into the fear and say, all right, I'm going to allow myself to feel whatever the feelings are. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to survive. Then that first step is going to lead you to success on the other side. And that the fear is really those false evidence appearing real that's making you in the thoughts in your head and are sabotaging you. But if you can sage the thoughts and realize that those are just thoughts that are meant to try to break you down, and think about the reverse of it and what the beautiful thing is can happen. And then you might be like Dorothy, where you write a book and pay it forward. I coach at a nonprofit with women who are, in between homelessness or overcoming addiction or just need a place to be with their children. And I tell each and every one of them, unfortunately, you are not the last person to sit in this seat where you are today. And you can make a difference to the person coming behind you if you can write a book about your life. Even if you're not going to publish it, but just write it, write that story and go back and read your story and see your successes. It's so, so, so powerful because everybody has a story and has a book in them, and doesn't mean you have to publish them. It just means that, hey, I want you to know more about me because this is what my life was. And like you shared, Dorothy, I definitely think that as you shared that book will help others overcome those obstacles and really know that we're not alone. You know, we're not alone in our struggles and our challenges that we face in our life. So I'm glad you wrote the book, and we'll share where everybody can get that. I want to know. So let's talk about, you went on this journey about finding yourself and self-care and overcoming people pleasing. I want to know. I'm going to ask you this question. I haven't asked this in a while. But after you went through that process and you broke that down and you started on that journey of finding your joy, could you tell us what 3 things in your life bring you joy? Like, and really, and why do they bring you joy? Like, not, some people say, oh, the sun brings you joy. Yeah, that's great. The sun brings you joy and gives you my vitamin D. But why does the sun bring you joy? So share with us, what were some of those things you walked away from during that journey that bring you joy?
Sure. First of all, I just want to say one thing. In that healing journey, there is still times today that I still struggle with some of those things. So just because I took those 10 years doesn't mean that it could come up again, right? Because healing, I say, is like an onion. So you peel one layer off, you get the next one, right? So for the people that are listening, they think, oh, she's got it all together. No, I haven't. I haven't, but I'm willing to dig deep to make sure that the next layer is revealed. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up because that's so true. Because even today, I mean, even I think all of us, it's interesting you said that because I had somebody say to me one time, oh, I clients like, okay, so why are you coming here? Like, what brought you to me? And they're like, well, this coach I was working with, they said they did everything exactly like they coached me, but I'm watching on social media or I'm seeing them here. And I'm like, I'm totally with you. I'm going to sit here and tell you, I'm going to help coach you, but I still coach myself, or I still have coaches because life is not perfect every single day. I mean, my gosh, in 2015, I found out, I went through my identity destiny and went on the journey of figure out who I wanted to be. But last year, 2022, I lost my son. So there's things that come up from that. So I'm glad you pointed that out for sure. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. So what brings me joy? My family is number one, because definitely, even though they can drive me crazy some days, I truly do love them. And no matter what, we're truly there for each other. And that may seem cliche, but like I growing up, people would say something about my brother and I'd be like, and have his back. I'm like, you can't say anything. I'm the only one that can do that. So definitely family is everything for me. And I had originally come from a big family, but unfortunately now we're down to, in my immediate family, just the 2 of us, no, 3 of us. So it's quite something. So the more you lose, the more you appreciate. Let's just put it that way. So joy, family definitely brings me joy. My tribe, like I said, I have a couple different tribes. So, and to me, it's a group of women that, number one, will not let me give up on myself. Because there are times where I'm like, just forget about it. I quit. I'm not even me, who's the overcomer. Just I truly do have those moments where like I'm done. I just can't do anything more about this today. But then they remind me of my dreams, my goals, and definitely not letting me give up on myself. So my tribe of women that have, or my inner circle, definitely brings me huge joy for that connection, and knowing that, hey, if I pick the phone to one of them and like, hey, I just need to say this to vent it. Doesn't mean nothing. I just want you to listen to me. So having that tribe makes me happy. And the third thing is my veterans, because they bring me so much joy, because hearing their stories and hearing what they went through, I'm thinking there is no way that I can give up. Like, because if they didn't give up and they've been through a heck of a lot worse than I have, then how can I give up? And I'm not going to give up, because then that means that I give up on them. So, and having them in my life has actually brought me to a whole new level, because I'm like, no, wait a minute. If they can go through war, if they can see their brother or sister blown up beside them, I can get through this moment. So definitely, that definitely brings me joy to know that, hey, I'm at least helping and serving in some small way.
I love that. I love family. Yeah, family is a big thing for me too. And really, like I always say, my sons brought me joy, but Matthew, my oldest one, who we lost last year, he brought me joy because no matter what was happening, he could still act silly and catch you off guard with a silly thing like, "Hey, mom." And I'd be like, "Hey, what?" And he'll go, "These nuts," like, "Oh, you got me again," right? He would always like find that way to like get you on silly things. And then my oldest son, my younger son, Nate, he's like this old soul that is so into like history, and he questions everything. Like he called yesterday, had like a 2-hour conversation with my husband over, I don't know what they're discussing, but I knew it was something about politics, and they were having this great conversation. And it's fun to listen to him like have conversations like from both sides. So like the Democrats this and the Republicans this. Like he's like us. We haven't picked sides. We just go by what we feel is best for our family. And so it was interesting. My husband came out. I go, "That was a long time." He goes, "Yeah, he was pretty insightful today. I just listened to him." So he's got this insightfulness with them, and he loves history too. It's what I love about him. And then your tribe. Like for me, my Shiro League ladies. I mean, I started the Shiro League during COVID. I saw women become stressed out, trying to be teachers, trying to work, trying to run a business in the house, and be like, where do I fall in all of this? And I just started the Shiro League, just be like, let's do some self-care stuff. And that's how that started. And for me, last year when I lost my son, like they totally stepped up. They like were in my house. They were doing things. I was like, oh, even if they weren't here, they were like doing things from afar. So it's really cool. And you're right. I mean, veterans for you, I think it's just, I'm glad there are people like you doing, because we need more of that for sure. So we talk about joy, and so I'm going to flip it around a little bit with you, Dorothy. So play along with me here. So we make these to-do lists about the things I have to do for my business, the things I have to do for my house. I have to go grocery shopping, all these to-do lists, but we don't typically create the not to-do list. Those things that are on our to-do list that we need to stop doing, that's keeping us from enjoying our joy, keeping us from being with our family, keeping us from being with our tribe, keeping us from volunteering with your veterans. If you could think of things on your not to-do list that you have to put on there, like some women have said, stop the negative talk, right? No more negative talk. What would you say? Give me 3 things that would be on your not to-do list and why you would put them on that list.
Oh my gosh. That's a good one. Definitely the inner self-talk. That is totally, not listening to that. So yeah, don't listen to the devil or the deep blue sea that's in your head. Don't. And that is a daily thing, daily reminder. Don't. Oh yeah. Do not take people's, I'm trying to think of a word to put this diplomatically. So other people's opinions don't matter. Right. And so they don't pay your bills anyways. So don't let them rent space in your head. Totally. That would be number 2. And don't give up on yourself. Like, don't, just keep going.
I love that. Yeah.
I think I got that right.
You got it. No, you did perfect. Like the negative talk. Yeah. I mean, I always tell everybody, if that negative thought comes in your head, flip it. What's the positive? What's the opposite of it? Tell me the positive piece of it. Right. And then OPP, other people's opinions. Yep. I don't need to know. I will respect your opinion, and I might sometimes agree with you, but for the most part, this is my jam. This is what I love to do, right? And so so I love both of those. Those are great examples. So I'm glad you played along with me. I appreciate that. I love doing that. People often ask, can you send me questions for the show? I'm like, no, we're just going to have a conversation. And depending on what I might ask you, I don't want you to be prepared for it, because I want you to be, really be off guard and really be authentic with your answers. So thanks for playing along with that. So I know we're getting near the end of our hour here. So tell everybody, Dorothy, how they can reach you and where they can reach out to you at.
Sure, definitely. I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn at Dorothy Graham O'Dell, or my website, which is unstoppableovercomers.com. So can meet me anywhere of those locations, or you can even email me at grahamdorothy408@gmail.com.
Awesome. And we'll make sure those are all the show notes. So if you're listening or you're driving, you'll be able to read the show notes and catch them there as well. Okay, so I already prepared Dorothy ahead of time. I told her we're going to do our cards. So for those that are listening for the first time, we have my friend Carol Gill and her friend Diane Allen created these cards. They're called Better Questions, Better Life. I don't get kickback. If you want to go buy them, go to betterquestionsbetterlife.com. There are over 70 questions to ask yourself. You might meditate over them. You just might journal over it. You might just have a conversation with a friend over the card. But I'm going to shuffle the cards. Dorothy's going to tell me when to stop, and we're going to ask her what she comes up with. So here we go, Dorothy.
Stop.
Okay. So your question is, how can I connect with nature today?
Go for a walk.
Yeah. Where's your favorite place to go for a walk at?
Oh my gosh. Well, lately anywhere, but definitely down by the Detroit Windsor River. Where I live, there is a beautiful riverfront, and that is my happy place. Definitely really love walking there. So that was an easy question for me, because normally on my lunch hour, I am walking the entire lunch hour.
That's
If
awesome.
my videos that I do somebody has a message, I come up with something that I think somebody can hear or listen to. I'm always walking. So people know me by like the walking, talking lady here. So that's funny that I got that question.
That's so cool. That's so cool. For me, I love sitting on my front porch. I just love to sit outside on my front porch. And I tell I'm right across the street from a school. So I tell the moms, hey, don't sit in your car. Come swing on the front porch swing, bring a book or whatever. I don't have to be home. You don't have to say hi to me. And many times I come home, my husband be like, hey, somebody's at the front porch. Like, just let them be, let them have that time, but I love to do things like that as well. So thank you so much for playing along with me. You've done a lot of gaming with me today. I really love that. I think it's so cool. So I just want to tell everybody, make sure we'll put everything, like I said, in the show notes. Make sure that you can grab them from Dorothy and grab her book as well. We'll put all that in there for you. And I just want to remind everybody that we just came off of our retreat we just held in Gulf Shores, Alabama. Our next retreat is next year in September 12th through the 16th. If you want to join us, we are filling up fast already. The word is spreading about our retreat. So you can go to wslivingretreats.com. That's wslivingretreats.com. You can grab your spot today. We have pay in full all the way to 12-month payment plans. So we're very flexible to help you. We want you there. We want you to be part of our theme next year is glowing up, becoming your radiant self. And so we want you to be there and join us as well. And as we leave today, I want to remind each and every one of you, as I say every time, you come into this world, you're a rough oyster on the outside. There's a lot to do to really find your inner self. And as you do, you truly become your inner pearl of greatness. And so I hope you go out today and I hope you do something to fill your cup, put your cape on, and find your inner pearl of greatness. Have an amazing day. Thanks, Dorothy.
Thank you.